So, I finally did it. I got my rogue to level 60, and much like I did with the priest and the warrior before, I realised that this was the opportunity to make my top 5 dungeons to farm solo with a rogue for the purposes of gold making video. Now, if you haven't watched those videos already, then please do bear in mind the following rules when watching this video, and that is that I am making these videos with no professions in consideration. While my character does have professions and I will be using them and making mention of them in the video, the weighting of the dungeons and which ones are the best is not going to include money made from professions. Secondly, the class in question, if it should have a capacity to do something that other classes cannot do, that is something that is going to be in consideration. So with the rogue, for example, we will be considering a lock picking, and we will be considering the fact that we can stealth and pickpocket for these farms as well. And finally, these farms are done with a character, in this case, while it does have gear, they are intended to be able to be done by any character at max level on that class. So we will be weighting more heavily towards the dungeons that are achievable by anyone that is justing 60 wearing greens. But that's enough of the build up, let's dive right into it with number 5. So at number 5 we have Sunken Temple. Now this is rarely thought about as a dungeon that is ran with the purpose of making gold in mind, especially not by a melee class, but there is one distinct thing that gets this on the list, and that is the fact that the balcony mini bosses can be stealthed to, and you never have to kill another single mob. Now, these mini bosses are very easy to kill, and quite frankly, they're not that great in terms of their value, because a lot of the time you will kill all 6 of the bosses, and you won't get anything of value for the time and effort committing into this. However, at the time of recording, on the 7th of August, we have just received the Phase 5 patch, and nature resistance items for going into Anchorage are currently going through the roof, and some of the best ones you can get are going to be from these mini bosses. Now, that does not mean that they are going to vendor for a lot of gold, or that there's going to be some sort of magic trick other than offering them to people who are going to come with you to receive these items. Now, these items are going to be quite achievable to be found by most level 60s relatively easily. However, if someone wants to be able to get these items specifically for themselves and not want to have to roll with other people, or if they're playing a class that can't easily bypass the trash, they may be willing to pay you quite a lot in order to get some of these items. Now, the reason this is coming in at number 5 is because of the fact that other than this, there isn't really a lot of gold to be made from doing this. You can get yourself some of this nature resist gear if you are looking to go and raid Anchorage yourself, but the only real gold returns that you're going to be able to make is from people willing to buy these items, and that is quite niche in that it is going to be only for a short period of time while Anchorage is relevant, and it is only going to be if these items were to drop. So firstly, you've got to hope to get the drop in the first place, and then to also have it be of nature resistance, which is quite long odds to begin with, and that is why this is coming in at number 5. Now at number 4 we have Alderman. Now again, Alderman is not a dungeon that is that commonly run, but for similar reasons to Sunken Temple, it is one that we're going to be taking a look at today. Now again, we can bypass practically all of the trash in this dungeon, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is the fact again that we can get nature resistance gear here. Now this nature resistance gear comes from the last boss, and again it is a random chance to get an item be of the nature resistance, sorry, of nature resistance, not of the, and that is going to be one way in which you can make some cash. Now this is going to be hard to sell to people because of the fact that they would need to be able to get past a lot of this trash for you to be able to give them this on Masterloo, or they wouldn't be able to stand in the door and receive the item, and also it is going to be quite a lot longer of a run with less chances than Sunken Temple. But the reason that this particular dungeon is coming higher on the list than Sunken Temple primarily falls into the fact that there are additional gold sources. Now, first thing that I want to mention is going to be a profession, and that is going to be enchanting. I'm going to get this out of the way. This is not considered in the weighting, but if you are to get enchanting on your character that you are running this in, on your rogue, then you will be able to make a fortune here, because on my server at least, the average price of the small radiant shard that you get from disenchanting the blues from any boss drop is going to be in and around the 4 to 5 gold mark. Now 4 to 5 gold a boss when you can stealth from one boss to the next is pretty fantastic. Now don't get me wrong, some of these bosses can be a little bit difficult, so if you are under gauge you may only be able to kill a few, or you may need to wait on cooldowns and it will slow you down. And they do not all guarantee a blue, that is something that is also worth considering. So that is one additional way in which you can make money in here compared to Sunken Temple, but also on top of that there are 2 chest spawn locations which are going to increase the gold returns of a run in Alderman even further. Now these chests are at a level bracket where there is world epics available, but not really any of the particularly good ones from these chests. But you can of course get blues and greens that are level appropriate, as well as some crafting materials and things like that, so they do add some net return as well. Now usually these chests aren't particularly sought after because in Alderman I do believe both chests are locked at least half the time, but given that this is a rogue farming video, of course that's not a particularly big issue to you. If you also have skinning and or mining, there is a lot of nodes and a lot of skinnable mobs in this dungeon. So please do bear that in mind as well for extra gold if you happen to have those professions. Now in third we have Scarlet Monastery Graveyard. Now Scarlet Monastery Graveyard is slightly more well known for doing stealth runs in, but it is so fantastic I did feel that I had to put it on this list, so it's coming in around the middling spots. And it's basically coming here because of the fact it's so accessible. You don't even need to max level in order to do this. Anything relatively high is going to be absolutely fine, but the slight detriment to that is the fact that because it's so accessible and so easy, and because Scarlet Monastery Graveyard is such a short instance, it is very easy to do this run so fast that you would lock yourself out from instances quite quick if this was all you were doing. And most of the value in this dungeon comes in 2 forms. You can kill the boss and get yourself a blue item to sell to the shop. Quite frankly, it's not worth the effort most of the time of killing the boss, it's vendors for so little. However, you can make more money from both opening the chests, which again, being a rogue video, is a big consideration in the waiting of these dungeons. But also, if you do happen to have herbalism, you can get grave moss here as well, which can often sell for nearly about a gold per moss, so that is something else to consider. Like I say, this dungeon is very short. In fact, doing the run just to get this footage took me about 4 minutes, and that's including messing up and not paying very much attention. So like I say, it would be very easy to cap out incredibly quickly if this was all you were doing, but it is one to bear in mind, and because of its low level of difficulty, it's very accessible for those of you who have just dinged 60. Now in our penultimate spot at number 2 we have Razorfendowns. Now Razorfendowns is an absolutely fantastic dungeon, and it combines a couple of the points of what we liked about our previous dungeon choices in this list, but just with a few less of the drawbacks. So straight off the bat is going to be the fact that this dungeon is basically 100% skippable in terms of its trash. There's very little, if anything, that you actually have to kill, and you can just basically take yourself straight to any of the bosses. Now the bosses in here are going to beat out some of the ones in our previous mentioned dungeons because of the fact that if you do not have enchanting, which again I do highly recommend because disenchanting these blues is going to get you those small radiant shards and make you a fortune. If you do not have it, however, a lot of the drops from the bosses here do still have a relatively decent vendor value, so that is something to consider. But the big allure of this dungeon is between the herbalism nodes that you can gather if you have got herbalism, or more importantly again, the treasure chests. Now there are, to my knowledge, 6 different treasure chest spawning points in this dungeon. I'll show you a couple that I got on my run here, but also do bear in mind that they can basically spawn in any of the little huts at the end of the dungeon. So just as you're running through to get to the last boss, just keep an eye on every one of those little huts, just poke your head through, see if there's a chest there, and if there is, great, you've made yourself a fortune just by walking through a dungeon in stealth. It is absolutely fantastic and worthy of its number 2 spot. Now, like I say, its value does increase dramatically with enchanting to get those small radiant shards, but there is plenty of value doing this if you are a level 60 rogue with absolutely no professions whatsoever, just opening those chests. Because it is a slightly lower level as well, if you have trusting 60, you don't need to have your lockpicking up all the way in order to be able to open these chests. I think it's somewhere around the 200 mark, please don't quote me on that you need to be at in order to be able to open up these chests. And that is fairly attainable. So Razorfendowns in at number 2. Now at number 1, by an absolute landslide, is going to be Blackrock Depths. Now Blackrock Depths for rogues is an absolute goldmine, and this basically comes in the form of how many ways there are to make gold here. It is actually obscene. Now the first one I'm going to talk about is going to be the simplest one, and that is to pickpocket the mobs here. Now pickpocket obviously is a rogue ability that gets you junk boxes and just straight up silver out of the pockets of humanoid mobs. Well, that's basically all of Blackrock Depths. Now when you're level 60, these mobs are going to be in the low 50s, so there's very little chance of them seeing you through stealth. There are no stealth detection humanoids in the dungeons. The dogs do see you through stealth, but they're very easily to avoid, and also not that hard to kill if you don't manage to avoid them. And as a result, you can pretty much just run straight through in here, go through every major section of the dungeon and pickpocket every mob in the dungeon. Now, believe me, that 2 to 5 silver that you're going to get, even if you didn't get anything else, is going to make this worthwhile doing, because there are just that many mobs and it's so quick just to run past. You can put your pickpocket on a keybind that you can use as mouse over, and then just walk past spamming as you go past every humanoid and make an absolute fortune. Beyond that, the junk boxes that you get in here can contain things like major healing pots and major mana pots, which you can sell for an absolute fortune on the auction. I do actually should correct that. I do believe they can only give you the health pots, but even still, that's on my realm 3 to 4 gold per pot. So that is a nice return as well, which you are probably going to get 1 or 2 per run if you go and pickpocket the entire instance. Moving on from that, however, as a rogue, we also have the ability to get the relic coffer keys. Now, relic coffer keys drop in this dungeon from trash, and you can also purchase them on the auction house. If you do, there is a part of this dungeon where there is these doors along the wall that you can open and open the little chests that are inside. At level 60, this is very easy to do, and you can simply just go into this room, open up all of these chests, and be done with it. You can get your loot, get these bags of coins, open them all up, make a small fortune, and leave. Now, when you open up all of these chests, there is a boss that spawns, and there's also one in the room to begin with, that you may want to be prepared with your cooldowns to kill. It is definitely killable at level 60, I've done it many times. It's not even particularly challenging, providing that you kill the dog first. But that's not everything for Blackrock Depths. Believe it or not, Blackrock Depths actually has a third way of making you some fortunes, and that's going to be in the boss killing. Now, the boss killing, unfortunately at the time of release of this video, it is too late to be boosting for Hand of Justice for yourself or anyone else, because that has moved the boss drop from the General Angerforge boss to the last boss of the instance. However, many bosses on the way through Blackrock Depths can be soloed by a rogue, and the vast majority will drop blues with either a high vendor value or once again can be disenchanted into large brilliant shards this time around, which are going to sell for fortunes. So dependent on your gear level and your professions and the time at which you've been at level 60, how acclimatized you are to the class and such, there are 3 different options for you for making gold in Blackrock Depths, just straight off the bat there, each of which can make you an absolute fortune, so it was always going to be our standout winner at number 1. Now that's going to about wrap it up for this video, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do consider liking the video and or subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments for me, or things that you think that I've missed, or dungeons that you feel can make you a lot of gold that aren't making it onto this list, please do let me know down in the comments below, and as always guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Later.